started. If you look at our name, it's a family joke, the Dresners and one Wolfson. My sister Tamar's husband is Mark Wolfson, and there was a wealthy British Jewish family known as the Wolfsons, and my dad would always point out to my brother-in-law that his side of the family was not the rich ones. So that's what our name means. So sorry, Mark. So welcome everybody. This is obviously unofficially Hevreh night. I see a lot of familiar faces from Hevreh of Southern Berkshire, which is the synagogue that we belong to up here. We actually belong to another synagogue over on the New York side because we're those Jews, so we'll always need to have a synagogue that we don't go to at any given time. And we're going to have the rabbi from that synagogue on Saturday night. Tonight, however, we have one of the two rabbis from Hevreh of Southern Berkshire, Jodie Gordon, who's going to be leading us in the service. Jodie is not just our rabbi, she's also my boss as the religious school director. I teach Hebrew school and religious school. And Jodie is singularly responsible for the format of having different service leaders each night. I was originally interpreting my dad's wishes that the Shiva be through Temple Beth Tikva, his former synagogue, and that meant that only Temple Beth Tikva people could lead it. And Rabbi Gordon gently pushed back and said that this Shiva is not just about my dad, it's also about the mourners. And she got an assist from her partner in the pulpit, Rabbi Neil Hirsch. Jodie started pushing, Neil then gave a little push, and Rabbi similarly at Temple Beth Tikva gave me her rabbinic heter for doing the same. And so here we are, with Rabbi Gordon leading us tonight. And before I turn it over to her, I just want to say that it's wonderful to see so many Hevreh people, including so many of my religious school students. I just want to relate something. We have a mensch program that I teach at Hevreh. And when we came back from New Jersey yesterday, after you guys got 8 to 10 inches of snow, depending on where in Berkshire County you are, I was dreading needing to shovel our driveway. And lo and behold, when we pulled up, the driveway had been completely shoveled for us by our neighbor, Brian, across the street. And I just want to say to all the students out there that that is the definition of a mensch. And I want to thank Brian for doing that. It was a super menschy thing to do. Also, for my students, we're going to be talking about Jewish rituals of mourning the next time I come to class. I'll still be sitting Shiva this Sunday, so you won't see me on Wednesday and Sunday, but next Sunday, be ready. We're going to learn all about the mourning rituals that I have just experienced personally. So this Shiva Minyan is one of them, and I'm going to let Rabbi Gordon take it away. So.
Thanks, Avi. It's so nice to see all of the faces at the home of the Dresner Wolfsons right now. And I also want to thank my colleague, Rabbi Mika Simmerly, who I see you there. Hi, Mika. I'll share that not only was my gentle suggestion to Avi that perhaps many of the rabbis who love his family might want to offer comfort, but also was thinking about you. I'm glad to have you have a chance to join in mourning your friend and teacher tonight and not just to lead. And so we'll begin singing just a bit first to create the space for this service. The words are Eli, Eli. Eli, Eli, shelo yigamer leolam, hachol v'hayam, rishru shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, 'Hashamayim, 'Tfilat Adam, 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 ' Ishru shel hamayim v'rak hashamayim tfilat Adam. O God, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart. Once again, it is an honor to be with you all tonight. In moments like this, our tradition directs us to fulfill two mitzvot, balancing kavod hamet, honoring and respecting the dead, and nichum avelim, comforting the mourners. And tonight, as one of the many rabbis in the orbit of the Dresner family, I hope you'll permit me to lean perhaps a bit more heavily into comforting the mourners. I want to name something in particular tonight, which is that while every loss is unique, this one is perhaps even a bit more so. This is a loss that is held by so many, by an entire congregation who called Sai their rabbi, a generation who revered him for his remarkable contribution to civil rights. Truly, Rabbi Sai Dresner was a gadol hador, one of the giants of his generation. For me and for my colleagues, he was truly a rabbi among rabbis. And tonight, we have the sacred task of offering comfort to his family, to his sisters Phyllis and Eileen, to his children Tamar and Avi, alongside Mark and Natasha, and to his grandchildren Lev and Sasha. So I want to begin by noticing one of the gifts of Jewish feminist scholarship in the past 50 years, which has been to elevate the stories of women, often the women who surround great men, whose stories weren't always told. The book of Exodus is filled with examples of this, from the heroic midwives Shifra and Puah to Moses's mother Yocheved and sister Miriam, all of whom pushed the story of redemption forward in important ways. Rabbi Sai Dresner was indeed surrounded by great women. And so tonight, in addition to offering comfort, we elevate and offer special gratitude to Sai's sisters, to his daughter Tamar, to his daughter-in-law Natasha, as women whose strength and resilience and love allowed your father to have a beautiful death and one that was befitting of a magnificent life. I first had the chance to meet Sai through my husband Josh's work with him at Rabbis for Human Rights North America. And when Josh worked there, they honored your dad, I believe in 2011, as a human rights hero. In these last few years, I had the honor to know him really as Avi's dad and as Sasha and Lev's Grazeda, who was always so proud to come to religious school on a Sunday morning and to see his son teach, and perhaps to get a word or two in there as well, to offer a gem or two here and there. And tonight, I want to invite us to turn for the next little while to perhaps the most beautiful legacy he leaves behind, to his grandchildren. So Lev and Sasha, I heard you were terribly sad to miss religious school on Sunday. And I saved a taste of what we might have learned if you were there. We couldn't do it without you. So just yesterday, we marked the holiday of Tu B'Shvat, the new year of the trees. And Lev and Sasha, had you been with us, I likely would have told you a story about a man named Honi. Honi, the wise one, was also known as Honi the circle maker. So by drawing a circle and stepping inside of it, he would recite special prayers for rain. Sometimes he would even argue with God during a drought, and then eventually the rains would come. He was indeed a miracle maker. But as wise as he was, sometimes Honi saw something that would puzzle him. and he would ask questions so that he could unravel the mystery. And one day, Honi the circle maker was walking on the road, and he saw a man planting a carob tree. And Honi asked the man, "How long will it take for this tree to bear fruit?" And the man replied, 70 years. Honi asked the man, "Do you really think you're going to live for another 70 years and that you're going to get to eat the fruit of that tree?" And the man answered Honi, "Maybe not. However, when I was born into this world, I found many carob trees planted by my father and grandfather. Just as they planted trees for me, I am planting trees for my children and grandchildren so that they will be able to eat the fruit of those trees." Lev and Sasha, your Zeta planted beautiful trees in this world, trees of justice and peace, trees of truth-telling and wisdom. But perhaps the most beautiful trees he planted were the ones that tended the gardens that brought you. Tonight, we offer a service of remembrance and consolation, lifting up words of prayer and poetry, linking Sai's life with the millennia-old tradition of the Jewish people.
With a strawberry thing in it. It was delicious.
Poet Maya Angelou wrote, "When great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shudder, lions hunker down in tall grasses, and even elephants lumber after safety. When great trees fall in forests, small things recoil into silence, their senses eroded beyond fear. When great souls die, the air around us becomes light, rare, sterile. We breathe briefly, our eyes briefly see with a hurtful clarity. Our memory suddenly sharpened examines, gnaws on kind words unsaid, promised walks never taken. Great souls die, and our reality bound to them takes leave of us. Our souls dependent upon their nurture now shrink, wizened. Our minds, formed and informed by their radiance, fall away. We are not so much maddened as reduced to the unutterable ignorance of dark, cold caves. And when great souls die, after a period, peace blooms, slowly and always irregularly. Spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration. Our senses, restored, never to be the same, whisper to us, they existed, they existed. We can be and be better, for they existed. The psalmist wrote, "I am ever mindful of the Lord's presence. I set God before me always. Shiviti Adonai lenegdi tamid kimi mini bal emot. Lachen samach libi ve'agel kvodi af besari yishkon lavetach. Ki lo ta'azov nafshi lishol, lo titein chastecha lirot shachat. Todi'eni orach hayim, orach hayim. Sova semachot et panecha, ne'imot b'mincha netzach. Shiviti Adonai lenegdi tamid, kimi mini ba emot." The poet Merritt Malloy writes, "When I die, give what's left of me away to children and old men that wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give to them what you need to give to me. I want to leave you something, something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not in your mind. You can love me most by letting hands touch hands, by letting bodies touch bodies, and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die, people do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away." Adonai roi lo echsar bino tesher bitzeni al mei menuchot yenachaleni. Nafshi yeshoved, yancheni b'maglei tzedek, yancheni b'maglei tzedek, leman shemo. Gam kilach b'gates al-mavet lo irara ki ata imadi shivtecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni. Taroch lefanai, shulchan neged sorerai, deshanta vashemen roshi, kosi rivaya. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai v'shavti b'veit Adonai leorech yamim. Adonai roi lo echsar. Adonai roi lo echsar. And we'll read together at home. Ooh. Dawn, it's okay, I'm sorry. But if you can bring that back up, I would love for us to join together in the words of Psalm 23. A Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. God maketh me to lie down in green pastures, leadeth me beside the still waters. God restoreth my soul. God guideth me in straight paths for the sake of God's name. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Truly, as we sit next to our friends who are walking through that valley of the shadow of death, we have the opportunity now to offer them comfort. We take a few moments for private prayer, for personal prayer, If you'd like, you can close your eyes. If you'd like, you can turn off your camera for just a moment as we meditate on the life of Rabbi Cy Dresner, offering comfort to his family tonight. As we continue now with our El Malei Rachamim, it is customary to rise for this traditional memorial prayer. I'll invite you, if you're able at home, to do so. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hamitzei Mincha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, Im Kedoshim Utahorim, Kezohar Harakia, Mazhirim, Et Nishmat, Harav Yisrael Shmuel, Ben Avram V'Tamar, Shehalach Le'olamo, Barachamim Yastirehu, B'Seter Knafav Le'olamim, Bitror HaChaim, Et Nishmato, Adonai Hunachlato, V'yanuach B'Shalom, Al Mishkavo, V'nomar Amen. May the source of life, the fountain of all being, open our hearts to compassion and our eyes to wisdom, that we might glimpse in perfect peace and sadness the way of all things. May Rabbi Cy Dresner's memory be for us a blessing, and may we never let the light of his love grow dim in our hearts. May we remember all his worthy and righteous deeds, that his memory be forever bound up in the bond of life. God is our source and destination, our beginning and our end. May Rabbi Cy Dresner's death awaken us to this truth, that the bond of love we shared and share not be severed in sorrow. May he rest in peace, as together we say, Amen. As we move toward Kaddish, we call to mind the words of Rabbi Alvin Fine, who wrote, "Birth is a beginning and death a destination. And life is a journey from childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness and often back again, from health to sickness and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, from birth to death to life everlasting. As we turn to the mourner's Kaddish, Avi, Tamar. I'm unable to see if Phyllis and Eileen are on tonight. Pardon me, but I would invite you to unmute yourselves as we offer you now this chance to say Kaddish.
Yitgadal v'yitgadash shmei Rabba. Me'alma tivrach rutei v'yamlich malchutei. V'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael. V'agala v'zman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevarach v'olam almei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitloman v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalav shmei d'kudusha b'richu. Ve'ela min kol berchata v'shirata, v'tosh b'chata v'nechmata, da'amiran ve'alma v'imru, amen. Yehei shlaba rabba min shumaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom v'mromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen.
May the source of peace be a source of peace to all of you as you mourn. May we be a source of comfort to you as you are bereaved. As together we say, Amen. We are going to conclude our service with this final prayer. If you'd like to join me from home, there is great meaning in saying these words out loud as we direct our hearts now to the mourners. Cracks form as we survive grief. They start with sharp, broken edges, eventually dulled when worn by time. The crevices remain, but they narrow, and rather than fall into them, hope and light begin to emerge. We can never completely avoid them. They can reappear when least expected. We learn to appreciate their evocations. The sharp stabs become less and fewer. The colorful memories grow more vivid. Without the gift of deeply loving, the sorrow of grief can't abide. And without the sorrow of grief, the depth of love remains silent. We all heal in our own time frame. May Adonai speed your healing now. This part of our service is concluded. Avi, I turn it back to you.
Thank you, Rabbi Gordon, for such a beautiful service. Rabbi Gordon called me earlier today and she asked me what was important, what were the crucial sine qua non elements of the service. And I said, as long as we have El Malei Rachamim and Kaddish, I'm good with anything that you want to do. Oh, and the 23rd Psalm. Those were the three things I said. And she said, do you want the full mincha service? I said, no, I mean, those three things is all I want. And she took it and ran with it and really hit it out of the park. Sorry to mix metaphors. So I just want to thank you for that service, Jodie. So I just want to talk briefly about how all of this has been working each night. First of all, let me just say that I understand a lot of people were not able to join in the funeral service because it had been capped at 300. If you missed the funeral, fear not. It is posted on the Temple Beth Tikva website at this point. I think you have to fast forward to like minute 1550 or so, and for the beginning. And so you can see it there. Each night's minyan will also be posted on that website. I believe the first night is already there, maybe the second. Let me just say, for all of the Hebrew school families and children present, the second, last night, Shiva should have an R rating on it and a parental warning. So do not watch that one if you are under the age of 30, I would say. That's where I would cut that one off at, for those who were here last night. I will not go into details. Each night we have, as I mentioned, a different service leader. We also have a different speaker or speakers featured, after which we will then open it up to hear from everybody else who wishes to speak. If you do not wish to speak, but have something that you would like Tamar and me and my aunts to see, by all means, send an email to me, avidresner7@gmail.com, and I will gladly read it and pass it along. All of the service leaders and speakers for each night are on the Temple Beth Tikva website. It's not quite finalized yet, but just about everybody who's going to be there. All the service leaders for sure are there. Not quite all the speakers are there, but for the Hevreh members here, and let me also note, by the way, all of my fellow teachers at the religious school and the Hebrew school, and let me also note all of my Hevreh men's book group members who are here. I want to give you all a special shout out. So for the Hevreh members, Everett Gendler is going to be offering a special reading by Martin Luther King at our service on Thursday evening, right before Andrew Young speaks. And Rabbi Alan Setcher, who, now that my dad is gone, is now officially the most arrested and jailed rabbi from the civil rights movement, will be speaking after Andy Young. And then we'll open it up to all of you. So tonight, I'm very pleased to introduce Leonard Grob, who is the vice president of Partners for Progressive Israel, which, like many Jewish groups, has morphed from too many groups for me to count, and he will explain the evolution. But he's going to be talking about a side of my dad that I think gets overlooked. His relationship with Martin Luther King and his civil rights work obviously is, first and foremost, and has pride of place for Americans. But actually, my dad was equally as proud, if not even more so, of his work on the Israeli left. He was extremely early and extremely outspoken on Israel's policies in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. He probably took a lot more flack for his stances on Israel than he ever took for his stances on civil rights. And if I had to put a percentage of the hate mail devoted to each, I would say that maybe 60% of the hate mail was for Israel stuff, and 30% of the hate mail was for civil rights stuff, and 10% was probably Vietnam school prayer and from me and Tamar for embarrassing us. So I think without further ado, I will turn things over to Leonard Grob to talk about that work of my father's.
Thank you, Avi. Cy Dresner has always appeared to me as a prophetic voice. Whether it was his work in civil rights that we've heard so much about, or his work for a just Israel that I'll be emphasizing at this Shiva, Cy took with the utmost urgency the prophetic call, tzedek, tzedek tirdof, justice, justice shalt thou pursue. Cy's pursuit of justice, whether in Alabama, Jerusalem, or New Jersey, was cut from one cloth. I should add Massachusetts to this. Cy Dresner was a giant in his lifelong quest to redeem Zionism, to take it back from today's sinners, from the inhabitants of today's Nineveh. In his mind, the right wing in Israel and their knee-jerk United States supporters. Those who have co-opted Zionism for their own appropriative, expansionist purposes. Like the prophets of old, Cy put Israel on notice, actually the title of his 1996 New York Times letter to the editor. I did not know Cy early in his life, when as a member of Habonim Dror, the labor Zionist youth group, he spent time on Kibbutz Urim in the Negev. As Avi and others have shared with me, while on kibbutz in 1952, Cy received his draft notice. Upon hearing that they were about to lose him kibbutz members took a vote as to whether Sai should stay on kibbutz or return home. The vote was overwhelmingly in favor of his staying put, though, as we know, returning home was to be his future. I did not come to know Sai until after his landmark work during the civil rights era. I met Sai when we were among the founding members of what today is called Partners for Progressive Israel. He was at the heart of our organization for the past 3 decades, serving as its president for 3 years during the 1990s. At board meetings, Sai was his most ardent self, speaking out for a just peace with the Palestinians based on 2 sovereign, viable states. Sai would often be the one board member who would offer the historical background of contemporary issues, tying what was happening currently to the summons, the call he heard from our Masoret, the Jewish tradition. Sai loved to explain how the cause of justice was rooted in Judaism. He was convinced that to be a true light unto the nations, Israel today had to break the cycle of Jews so abused in their past, becoming, on gaining statehood, abusers themselves, occupiers of Palestinian land. Sai would speak out for a just Israel and for peace anywhere and everywhere. When invited to the Obama White House in acknowledgement of his civil rights work, Sai spent his precious minute or 2 while shaking hands with the president saying, and I quote, "Please do everything in your power to see to it that peace is made between Israelis and Palestinians. Peace is not only desirable, but it is possible, even though a lot of people have given up on its possibility." Obama then replied to Sai, "You still have your passion." Sai would argue against Israel's occupation of Palestinians with every fiber of his being. His fervor would take over his body, his being. His body would shake. He was an early opponent of the settler movement, making his opposition known just months after the first settlement was established on the West Bank. On the ground in Palestine, Sai at one juncture stood up to militant settlers who were attempting to disrupt the olive harvest of Palestinian villagers. Back in New Jersey and New York, he would inveigh against the occupation, always keeping us on track to remain faithful to our Jewish heritage. That heritage, Sai insisted fervently, calls on us not only to oppose the occupation, but at the same time to tend tirelessly to social justice on the ground within Israel, to care for the proverbial widow, the orphan, the poor one. Over the years, Sai responded to the prophetic call in his advocacy for Soviet Jewry, for members of the LGBTQ community in Israel, for the disabled, for new Mizrahi Eastern immigrants. Sai was perhaps at his best when we, in Partners, took our annual study tour to Israel and Palestine. How Sai would boast in his special, ingenuous way about the fact that over a period of close to 25 years, he had never missed what we call our Israel-Palestine Symposium. How proud he was of his record attendance. When on the soil of Israel and Palestine, Sai was even more passionate than usual about the need to resolve justly the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, crying out against settlers, as he wrote in the New York Times piece, settlers eating up more of the minuscule amounts of land available to them. To be on our symposium with Cy Dresner was an experience one would not soon forget. He was our teacher, our guide, our chronicler, our provocateur, our cause of good trouble. Cy was lovable in the extreme, a storyteller par excellence. His humor, his candor, his depth and breadth of scholarship, all of a piece. Cy was exceedingly loyal to Partners for Progressive Israel. When he no longer was able to drive, he would schlep, and I mean a major schlep, to board meetings by bus from New Jersey, and then a taxi from Port Authority to our office then in the West 20s. He would enter the boardroom tired, but immediately energized by discussion of the issues at hand, hardly waiting a moment to jump into the conversation. If we on Partners Board were sometimes uneasy with an overly long Cy Dresner speech, if we were frustrated by him sometimes moving seamlessly from English to Hebrew with a splash of Yiddish, even when few of his listeners understood these languages, these were the tiny, lovable foibles of a giant of a man, a true mensch. Cy will be missed terribly by us at Partners, as he will be by all of us. It is impossible to think about Partners for Progressive Israel without Cy as our prophetic voice. Our board meetings, our trips to Israel and Palestine will take on a very different cast without him. Israel will have one less compelling voice calling it to account. A just peace between Israelis and Palestinians will have one less advocate. A Zionism infused with the spirit of a Jeremiah will have one less champion. To have worked for justice alongside Dresner has been a gift, one not ever to be forgotten. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. May the memory of righteous Cy Dresner, working among his many social justice causes for Israeli-Palestinian peace and for human rights in Israel, may the memory of Rabbi Cy Dresner serve as a blessing to us all.
Lenny, thank you so much for that. I want to correct one thing you said that was redundant. An overly long Cy Dresner speech is just called a Cy Dresner speech. So something else that Lenny knows and Tamar knows, but nobody else, is that when we were planning the final weeks and months with our dad, he specified one charity that he wanted to leave a substantial amount to, and that was Partners for Progressive Israel. So there are links on the Temple Beth Tikva website to 4 different places that you can donate in his memory, and Partners for Progressive Israel is right at the top of that list, and I would encourage you to do so. I'm sad to say that some of what Lenny said still sounds controversial to a lot of people out there so many years after the 6-Day War. And still so many American Jews do not agree with those sentiments. And my dad wanted to live, our dad wanted to live to see peace between Jews and Arabs and Israelis and Palestinians. And unfortunately, he didn't. But he was ever hopeful, as you heard him say, probably thousands of times. For him, the glass was always, always half full, never half empty. And so I sincerely hope that his lifelong dream of seeing that peace will happen in our lifetime. And Partners for Progressive Israel is one of the organizations that's working to make that happen. So Lenny, thank you for not only for what you said, but for the work that you do and that Partners does to further that cause that meant so much to him. Tonight, we don't have any other scheduled speakers. So if I should have made this announcement earlier, and I'm sorry that I didn't, if you have something that you would like to say, if you go into the chat under Temple Beth Tikva, that will get you to Dawn Tausis, who is hosting us this evening. And you can make yourself known to her as someone who would like to speak. Perhaps a number of you have already done so. If you have not, feel free to do so now. Just go in the chat, find Temple Beth Tikva and say, I'd like to speak. And Dawn will call on you at the appropriate time. So Dawn, did anybody already do that?
No.
No, okay. All right, well, while people are doing that, let me give some previews. Tomorrow night, our service will be led by Rabbi Michael Farbman from Connecticut, who is a dear, dear family friend of Natasha and her sister Irina, who co-officiated at our wedding with Dad, and he's going to be the service leader. The speaker will be Ray Arsenault, who, as I said last night, literally wrote the book on the Freedom Rides called Freedom Riders, on which the PBS documentary was based. So that's going to be tomorrow evening, same time, 7 o'clock. Thursday is the big night, if we can speak of any one night as being the big night. Rabbi Ari Lorge of Central Synagogue will be leading the service then. And as I mentioned earlier, Rabbi Everett Gendler will be doing a reading by Martin Luther King, followed by Andrew Young speaking, followed by Rabbi Alan Setcher speaking. Friday night, we're off for Shabbat. Saturday, we come back, Motzei Shabbat, with Or Rose from the Chatham Synagogue, the other synagogue we belong to, and Hebrew College. Or is phenomenal and a dear, dear friend, along with his wife, Judith Rosenbaum, who's the executive director of the Jewish Women's Archive and known to our Hevreh members. And then Saturday night, we have my dad's cousins, the Kutzes, speaking, 2 different generations. And then finally, closing things out, Sunday night, our Minyan will be led by Rabbi Angela Bookdahl of Central Synagogue. And we will have another one of my dad's cousins, Jay Schuster, speaking to us that evening for the final night of Shiva. So I think I've killed enough time for somebody to make themselves known to Dawn. Yes, no, not yet. Should I start dancing? What should I do? If you don't have anything to say, that's okay. I mean, you can save it up, and we can come back tomorrow and we'll get a shot then as well. But if you do have something to say, by all means, we're here to listen. And you don't have to have known my dad well to speak up. You can have known any one of us here as well. I mean, a lot of you knew my dad peripherally through me, through my presentations at the men's book group and in religious school and other places. But anyway, I'm not forcing anybody.
The chat doesn't let you type.
Oh, the chat's not working. Well, that would
Right.
explain. Okay. So in that case, if the chat isn't letting people type, if somebody unmutes and lets us know who they are and that they would like to speak at the risk of having a cacophony occur, let's give it a shot. Is there somebody out there who would like to speak?
I will say something then. My late husband, Bob Starr, and Rabbi Dresner had worked together at Shari Shalom on social action issues. And then Bob and I got to know your dad,
Yes.
Rabbi Dresner, when we were active with him in American Jewish Congress. And I always remember great respect for him, enjoyed being with him, and certainly sorry for his loss, but glad that he lived long enough to raise you and your sister and to do the wonderful things that he's done in the world. So thank you for arranging what you've done here tonight.
And thank you, Barbara, for being nachshon and jumping into the Red Sea to go first to part the waters for others. Anybody else? If the chat is not working, looked like somebody else wanted to say something. Did I see things? No.
Ellie Katzman. Ellie has his hand raised.
Oh, Ellie. Okay, I can't see everybody on my screen, so thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, well, I didn't know your father, but I certainly knew of him and had great respect for what he was doing. I fortunately know you, Avi, a lot better. And I thank you for what you do for Hevreh Men's Book Group. And we have a number of the members here of that book group. And it's been a privilege for me to participate in it. And I thank you. And I know that your father's memory will be a blessing to all.
Thank you, Ellie. And for those who don't know, the Hevreh Men's Book Group, we call ourselves the Saganaki Boys because Saganaki is the flaming cheese dish that we would get at the Greek restaurant in Great Barrington, where we would meet pre-pandemic. And hopefully when the pandemic is finally behind us, we'll be able to convene there again. So Ellie, thank you for representing the Saganaki Boys here tonight. Anybody else? Yes.
I just wanted to say I had the great pleasure of meeting your dad when you brought him as part of your Mensch project with Hevreh Religious School. He came and spoke at Laurel Lake. So we had, I think, 5th, 6th graders. We also had their young teachers. So we had some teenagers and the over 60, let me say, at Laurel Lake Retirement Community. And it was such a privilege to hear him. And it was such a privilege to be in the back of the room and seeing all the generations, hearing it firsthand, first person history. And I know it really resonated with my son, Danny. And on Martin Luther King Day, we got a picture from the Lincoln Memorial covered in snow. And that felt very fitting for this particular time, for him to send us that shot. So thank you for sharing him.
Thank you for sharing, Joan. And those who don't know, Joan is the director of our religious school. Rabbi Gordon's the education director. The big boss, Joan, is the religious school director. So little boss, but but big person with a big heart. So thank you.
And, this is Terry Sash. I just wanted to say it was really nice at the funeral to hear you both speak about your father. I know sometimes when you have a family member that's a great, you have to share them with a lot of people. And so it was really nice to hear you both speak about your father as like a person who's your dad. And the stories that you shared, I just wanted to say that I really appreciated hearing. I appreciate hearing about his greatness, but also about his humanness as a person.
Thank you, teacher Terry. Terry heads the tiny Talmidim at Hevreh, of which Lev and Sasha are graduates of, before religious school for the tiniest students. And Terry's family is pretty great also, and connected to my dad's story, because Terry's family supplied the pastrami to Katz's Deli. And those of you who read the forward piece will know how prominently Katz's Deli featured in that piece. So Terry and I have a connection through that as well.
Avi, Debbie Stone would like to speak.
Absolutely, Deb.
Okay, so I thought there were a few words that I could share with you. A couple conversations, to use Harvey Handler's words, gems, with that in conversations with your dad. The first one was when I was working at the UAHC, and your dad called and he said, "Hi, Debbie, this is Rabbi." And then he stopped for a minute and he said, "Well, maybe I shouldn't introduce myself that way when I call you at work. Everybody is a rabbi who calls you. And then we thought about it for a minute. I said, no, Rabbi Dresner, your voice is so distinctive. You don't have to worry about us not knowing who you are when you call. A couple of years after that, I don't know if you remember this. I was the youth advisor at the temple. Your dad was the rabbi. And you like to hang out here very often when things were happening or not happening. It was a nice refrigerator to jump into with your sidekick, Paul. And one night you were here and the phone rang. It must have been 9:30. And I answered the phone and a voice says, Debbie, this is Rabbi, but I'm calling his Avi's father. Send him home. That was conversation number 2, which we laughed a lot about. And number 3, my son had a major accident with his arm and had surgery, was in the hospital for a couple of days. He was an avid baseball player as a kid. And Rabbi Dresner called. I'll never forget. It was Sunday night about 8:30. The phone rings. We pick it up. It's Rabbi Dresner. He asked for my son. Carrie gets on the phone, and your dad proceeded to talk to him for 25 minutes about baseball players who had injured their arms and came back to be all-stars, which was so apropos of the way he handles himself and the knowledge that he knew. I was always in awe. And I think the greatest honor your dad bestowed upon me was to ask me to introduce the speaker at his lecture when Andrew Young was there. So I have many, many fond rabbi memories, Rabbi Dresner, and feel very close to you guys. You and Tamar spent a lot of time with me when you were young. And I really enjoyed that and glad to have these connections. May he rest in peace.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Deb. Debbie was, yeah, as Debbie said, she was mine and Tamar's youth group advisor. And, you know, Deb, if I calculated the dollar amount of the food from your refrigerator that I consumed in my life with Paul, we'd be well into 5 digits. So I'm sorry if you have to retire a little bit later because of
Lovingly
that.
done, lovingly donated, Avi.
And we also babysat, I mean,
Yes.
for Debbie's kids as well. So thank you. Dawn, anybody else, or is the chat working or not?
The
No.
chat is working.
Oh, it is.
It is. But no.
That's okay.
Okay.
You know,
Oh, wait, no. Richard Robbins would like to speak.
So, Avi, first of all, sincere condolences. Your dad was such a hero and also a great friend, both of my immediate family and my extended family. I'm surprised that no Bograds have beaten me to speaking at one of these events. They're usually not quiet. I went back and watched your father's talk from 15 years ago at my daughter's baby naming, and it was really classic Dresner. Until the funeral, when you mentioned how he considered Irv Schoenblum to be the second funniest person he knew, I hadn't really thought about how much he made lists. For example, when he officiated my wedding in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, he talked about W.E.B. Du Bois, who was born in Great Barrington and was the 3rd greatest African-American. This was when we met with him before the wedding. And of course, saying that, he went into talking about number 1 and number 2 and gave a prolonged talk about them. I wonder now if Du Bois has lost a spot in the ranking to Obama, but we might never know that. Your dad was also very excited to be officiating at my wedding in Massachusetts, which at the time was one of the few states that allowed same-sex marriages. I'm sure he was disappointed that Wendy is female. But he was really a hero to me and someone who used both his power and his religion overall as a force for good. For me, religion is much more about speaking out and fighting for what is right, whether civil rights, equality, speaking against government policy. And that's something I completely credit to him. Anyway, back to my daughter's baby naming, he was describing my grandmother, after whom we named our daughter, as being one of the 2 greatest women he ever met, the other being Eleanor Roosevelt. On later occasions, my grandmother slipped down to number 2 and Eleanor Roosevelt became the clear number 1, but it was still very gratifying to hear him having so much respect for my grandmother. And I know here I keep weaving my stories around and going on tangents, and I do this as a tribute to your father. I know you compared him to Moses. Unlike your dad, I don't make lists, so I can't really comment on this, but to Terry's point, I think you did a great job of paying tribute to such a great man. I think this week has been just a great exercise in paying tribute, and you've done it with such great poise. And again, condolences. We'll really miss him.
Thank you, Rich. I mean, you'll forgive me. To me, you'll always be Richie Robbins. We came up in the Hebrew school ranks together at Temple Beth Tikva. We were in the confirmation class together, and it means a lot to hear that reminiscence from you, not only because of our connection, but because, as you said, of your connection to the Bograd family, which meant so much to my father. And there's no question that Joe Bograd, as I said with his daughter, would have been one of the featured speakers on one of these nights had he been with us. Alas, that's what happens when we get to be our age, is that we start to lose all of these people in this generation. And that's why I feel privileged in a way that we can do all of this on Zoom and record all of this for posterity. I wish we'd been able to do that in years past, knowing that we were going to lose these people. But one of the things that Tamar and I are most proud of is that we did get a chance to record our father for the documentary. And we have hours and hours and hours of interviews with him, which, as you can imagine, will probably only yield minutes and minutes and minutes of usable material, because he went off on a million tangents, as Rich said. But we, fortunately, there are a lot of other people have footage as well that has already been edited. So we're gonna make use of that. So thank you. Anybody else, Dawn, or are we good?
No, not at the moment.
Okay. So that being said, we will wrap up early tonight, which is good. Everybody needs to conserve their energy, because tomorrow we're going to have some extra time spent on translation, because after Ray Arsenault, the civil rights historian, speaks, my in-laws, Natasha's parents, are going to speak to us in Russian, and I will do my best to translate, and Natasha will be here to assist. Rabbi Farbman, who will be leading.
I'll be here to correct him.
Exactly. Rabbi Farbman, who's from Vitebsk in Belarus, will also be a Russian speaker, as will my sister-in-law, Irina. So if I screw up, they'll jump right in and help. So tomorrow and Thursday will probably be exceptionally long because of the number of speakers and who we have speaking. So it's good that we're going to put some minutes in the bank tonight, and we'll probably go well over time on Thursday. So Dawn, make sure you drink a lot of coffee. Tomorrow, I think it'll be close. Tomorrow we should be right on, roughly on time. Thursday is going to be a whole different story.
It's very rare that a Dresner lecture would wrap up early.
Amen. And I am certainly no different in that regard, as you noted last night, Dawn. So, okay. So if nobody else wants to speak, we will sign off for this evening, and we will see you in 11 hours or so. So 23 hours. Sorry. 23 hours. Sorry. Thank you, tomorrow. Okay. So thank you again. Thank you especially to Rabbi Gordon and all of the Hevreh members who showed up tonight. And what else can I say? We'll see you tomorrow night.
Thank you to Dawn, always, every night.
Yes.
Oh, of course. It's my pleasure. It was a beautiful service.
Thank you. Okay. Good night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.
Good night.
Good night.
Ricky,